What's up, football world? It is Bucky Brooks. I am Bucky Brooks. This is the Bucky Brooks Show, and we are tacking on a bunch of news today. Like yesterday, it came out on Tuesday. It came out that the Baltimore Ravens, who had agreed to a blockbuster trade for Maxx Crosby, perennial Pro Bowl defensive end, it came out that the trade had been nixed, that the Ravens decided to back out of the deal for a talented playmaker that was expected to really take their defense to the next level. Interestingly, the Raiders signed Trey Hendrickson today to a 4-year, $112 million deal with $60 million in guarantees to take on a one-time All-Pro player who has been one of the best in the business at sacking quarterbacks. On the surface, this appears to be some dirty pool by Eric DeCosta and company and the Baltimore Ravens. They appeared to have a deal done and, for whatever reason, backed out of the deal to then sign another pass rusher. What does this all mean? What does it mean for Hendrickson? What does it mean for the Ravens? How does Maxx Crosby recover? And can the Raiders bring him back into the fold? Those are the issues and those are the questions that we're going to tackle here on the Bucky Brooks Show. Before we get started, since we're talking about the Ravens, I got to let you know that on FanDuel Sportsbook, the Ravens are plus 500 to win the AFC. And that's not surprising because the Ravens have been one of the teams that have been touted as a title contender for the last few years. I am not surprised to see those odds really leaning in their favor. Here's what's not leaning in their favor. I would say the respect of general managers and executives around the league after seeing how the Ravens pulled this off. And look, let's be honest, they did the Raiders dirty with this deal. And the reason why I say they did them dirty is anyone who has been around the league knows that physicals are kind of like a wink nod agreement. You wink, you nod, you shake hands. And if a player is the kind of player that you want on your team, that is a pass when it comes to the physical. For whatever reason, the Ravens didn't pass Maxx Crosby, even though they knew Maxx Crosby was coming off a torn meniscus where he had surgery in January, but he was scheduled to be ready. By the time we got to camp and started playing, he was going to be there and available. For whatever reason, the Ravens felt like, this isn't good enough. Our medical staff won't clear you. Maybe, just maybe, we want to have second thoughts about this deal and look in another direction. What's interesting is Trey Hendrickson was in the building the other day, and quickly they signed him after announcing, or it leaked, that they had backed out of the deal. To me, you don't have Trey Hendrickson in the building unless you already know that something may be going on with Maxx Crosby, unless you seriously were entertaining the thought of signing both guys, which is highly unlikely. In doing this, what Baltimore has done is, look, man, they've kept it business, and it's well within their right. Great trades aren't agreed upon until you pass the 4 p.m. deadline, until the league year starts. And look, the Ravens were well within their right to back out of this deal if Maxx Crosby failed his physical. Now, in failing the physical, you begin to wonder, well, they knew about the knee injury. They knew that he was on a road to recovery. They also had access, I'm sure, to the medical records and progress and prognosis from his doctor who operated on him and all of those things. They had to know those things ahead of the deal before proposing the deal, because Maxx Crosby missed the last game of the season because he was out due to an injury in spite of trying to play through that. So to me, this is not a thing of naivete or ignorance. This was intentional in terms of the Baltimore Ravens backing out of the deal. And the reason why I'm so convinced that it's intentional is because it's not the first time that they've done it. Going all the way back to 1997, they did this with Brock Marion, a safety for the Dallas Cowboys. They had agreed to a deal. They were ready to make it happen. And, something came up in the medical evaluation that made them pause and back out of that deal. They did it again in 2018 when they agreed to terms with Ryan Grant, a wide receiver, and just kind of felt like, something came up. We can't do it. Cold feet. They got out of it. Michael Brockers in 2020. Ravens had a deal for the guy who was having a standout career for the Rams. We're going to bring him in. All of a sudden, they don't believe that he's going to be able to play anymore because he has an injury or something just popped up in his file, and they don't want to be a part of it. So the Raiders traditionally have been a team that has really had hardline stances when it came to injury history and whether they would pass the physical and how they would let someone jump onto the team. But to me, I think this has less to do with Maxx Crosby, his injury history, and more to do with the noise that really reached a crescendo after people got word that the Ravens gave up 2 first-round picks to get Maxx Crosby. And don't ask me why this bothered so many people in terms of giving up multiple first-round picks to get a proven pass rusher in Crosby. But for whatever reason, it seemingly bothered the Ravens, and that's why they wanted out. Maybe it's, we gave up too much. We could have gotten some other things for him, i.e. a Trey Hendrickson at a note that is significantly cheaper than the kind of contract that Maxx Crosby was going to continue to command. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just realizing, hey, maybe the 31-year-old is a better overall fit for what we want to do with this defense. Regardless, in backing out, the Ravens have a little egg on their face because people wonder, can you really do business with a team that is, I guess, not to be trusted when it comes to finalizing those deals? We'll see how it impacts them going forward in terms of trying to be able to make deals with general managers who are trying to unload players, or they're trying to make a win-win situation by trading one player and receiving another one back. Given their history and now their reputation for not making a deal, it would be hard to say, hey, man, let's call the Ravens and see if we can get a deal done with them, because they're such an upstanding collection of citizens who do things the right way in terms of doing business the way the league is, the way the league has always operated. Now, I say all that and I give them a hard time, but I'm going to say they actually jumped into a better situation by getting Trey Hendrickson. And the reason why has little to do with the money and whether they save money on a 31-year-old pass rusher, has a lot to do with the production. Since 2021, Trey Hendrickson is second in the league in pressure rate at 13.2%. That's according to ESPN stats. He is fourth in sacks with 61 during that time span. By comparison, Maxx Crosby has 52 and a half sacks during that time, but you got to remember Trey Hendrickson missed. He only played 5 games in the season last season, so that number could be significantly greater than what Maxx Crosby brought to the table. Now, on tape, Trey Hendrickson is everything that you look for in a pass rusher, man. He is a terrific high motor player, great instincts and awareness, understands how to play through and around blocks, does a great job of utilizing his first step quickness and burst to get to the quarterback. He has violent hands and he doesn't mind wearing people out, and he whips them at the point of attack to consistently generate pressure. And he's been able to do it in winning environments and losing environments. The one thing that we know about him, the production is there. And in fact, 23-24, he combined for 35 sacks. He led the league in sacks in 24. I mean, we're talking about a big-time player, a player who understands how to get it done, even though he is entering the twilight of his career. You can say a lot of things about an older player, but what you can't dispute is the production that they put on tape. And the production is there for Trey Hendrickson, and the numbers certainly match the compensation. So at 4-year, $112 million with $60 million in guarantees, the Ravens came out like bandits when it comes to adding a blue chip player on their front line. Now, I've talked about Maxx Crosby and Maxx Crosby on tape. I mean, the report kind of reads just like the one that I've read on Hendrickson. Nonstop motor, length, athleticism, relentless approach. He's going to wear you down. He's going to outwork and outlast you until he gets the final crumb off the table. And he has some nastiness and violence that you love to see as a tone setter on the front line. That said, the injury is significant because it is a meniscus tear. And most people bounce back, but do you wonder, will he be subject to more little bumps and bruises along the way? A lot of times when you're a team thinking about taking on a contract, you do worry about those injuries and injury history, and you want to dig down deep to kind of get a feel for who they are, what they're about, what challenges will we face in terms of getting this player ready to play each and every weekend. And Crosby, he's been terrific throughout his career. He just had a hiccup this season that prevented him to have all-season surgery. But the prognosis, according to his agent, CJ LeBoy, is he's going to be fine and ready to go when it matters. When it matters, though, we wonder, where is he going to end up? Because if you're the Las Vegas Raiders and you already traded them two first-round picks, you've already gone through that emotional part of knowing that, hey, man, I'm letting one of my best players go, and I'm hopeful that we can turn these picks into players and bringing those two first-round picks back. Now that Maxx Crosby's coming back and not those picks, as an organization, you got to make a hard decision on whether to bring him in and try and get him up to speed with the new version of players that are in the building, the new collection of talent that's in the building, or do you keep him away from everything and say, hey, we're going to do right by you. We're going to find you a nice spot to go play. I think if you're the Raiders, given the tight money and the situation, you look at this defense and how they're positioned, you got to at least explore seeing, hey, Max, like we've done some things in the offseason. I know the words and stuff have been harsh, maybe from each side, but let's let bygones be bygones. And let's see if we can get you out here playing and you can get us to a respectable level in the first year of a new program. Moreover, let's see if you can kind of force people to put some respect back on your name after the Bears walked away, the Cowboys declined to have any interest the second go around in taking on his services. If you're Maxx Crosby, you have to be kind of like burning a little bit when it comes to wanting to prove yourself. And that chip on your shoulder could result in a dominant season for the high IQ, high motor player that has been able to dominate the league in a very, very short time. If you're the Ravens, you certainly understood that. You knew what was coming back. You knew the risk that was involved with doing it. And you also knew the kind of feedback you were going to get when you stepped away from it. You have to take that and you have to be quiet. You have to eat it for a few weeks, but eventually the news cycle will go on and this will go to the back pages as opposed to being on the front page. I think if you're the Ravens, you actually have to celebrate who you have in Trey Hendrickson in terms of bringing him in. I talked about the pressure rate. I talked about the sack totals, 81 sacks in 9 years, consistently near the top of the charts in terms of getting the quarterback down. But now you bring in someone with a little attitude that enhance what you already have on that defense. You think about Kyle Hamilton and what he brings to the table. Now you put Henderson, Roquan Smith. You have enough edgy veterans that can make it kind of hairy for opponents. And in Trey Hendrickson, you have a proven commodity, someone that you can bank on. Look, if he plays and he's healthy, he's going to get you 10 sacks. That's what he does. And I think his infectious nature in terms of people watching him operate as a high motor player, that's going to help the rest of your front line play with that kind of motor, play with that kind of aggression and relentlessness. Now we'll go to the Raiders and we could say the same thing about Maxx Crosby if he returns. I love the fact that the Raiders have acquired young linebackers, Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, to pair in there. They've continued to roll on with Eric Stokes on the perimeter. They have a feel for who they want to be and who they are with Lindenbaum coming over to anchor the front line. They signed a nice little receiver in Jalen Naylor who can make plays. So this team is trending in the right direction, but then you got to get who I would say your best player on board if you keep him. To me, this is a very simple process, but a hard one to undergo. And that is, hey, let's bring him in the office. Let's have a hard conversation. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about, hey, we were going to deal you for 2 first-round picks per your request. It didn't go that way. So why don't we start over and see if we can build this relationship from scratch. If I'm Cliff Kubiak, that's what I'm saying to Maxx Crosby. Because the Raiders certainly would love to have the picks, but they're better off with the player. Because what we do know about the player is a disruptive force who's been able to take over games on his own accord. If you are looking for not a quick fix, but a sustainable model that can work, you got to think about building this the right way and having your best guy rejoin the team, embrace the culture, the standards, and those things, and let him be the example to the young guys to buy in and to do it. When I look at the Raiders and all the changes that they made, man, if you add Maxx Crosby, even if we added him as a high-priced free agent, you feel much better about this defense than you felt previously. And I think if Maxx Crosby looks around and looks at the work that has been done by the Silver and Black, maybe he too also sees value in finishing his career as a Raider. Remember this, he talked about it on the podcast shortly after being traded to the Ravens, how his blood, his body will always bleed silver and black. Well, if he bleeds silver and black, I think this is when you test his allegiance to the franchise and say, hey, let's make this right. Let's see if we can get this done, because they're much better together than they are apart. We'll see if the Raiders do that. We'll see if Tom Brady can convince everybody that that's the best course of action. Some of the trades that'll be out there, I mean, you're talking about pennies on the dollar compared to what the Ravens were looking at prior to the Baltimore Ravens backing out. I think the Raiders have to be disappointed, but then you got to make the best out of a bad situation. And to me, making the best out of this situation is ensuring that Maxx Crosby runs out the tunnel in Allegiant Stadium and finds a way to make it happen for the silver and black. In Baltimore, the only way they can make it right is they got to win, and they got to win at a high level with Trey Hendrickson being a big part of it. If he's a big part of it on defense, and if Lamar Jackson plays to expectation as a two-time MVP, we're going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens not only being a title contender, but one of the favorites to represent the AFC. And I'm going to continue to represent us, the football fans, talking about the football world on this here podcast, the Bucky Brooks Show, put on by Believe. Make sure you come back, tune in by the end of the week, because we are going to talk about all the cool things that are happening in free agency with the league year officially kicking off on Wednesday at 4 p.m. And now that we're almost to their point, we will be able to talk about the deals in full earnest. So make sure you check back in for the podcast later this week. We'll have all the free agency stuff, and then we can cast our eyes to the draft and talk about how we can connect the dots between what your favorite team did in free agency and what they might mean for their future when it comes to draft weekend. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I'm out.